Hey guys, so with the 2-star dungeons coming out in 4 days' time, I wanted to just throw up the healing build that I use whenever I'm running dungeons with my group. So, one dagger isn't the most desirable healer in the world. It is going to have mana issues, but I'll show you the build that I use and I'll show you kind of a couple of tips on how you can get the most out of this. So, we'll start with the stat allocation. There's nothing special here. I don't point into wisdom until it becomes inefficient to do so. Picking up the cooldown speed, and then perception, although you don't need it for PvE. Ultimately, we're picking up the buff duration at 40, and we might as well get the attack range as well. And then strength as usual, just for the increased base damage and the max health on that side of things. I use the same gear as always in terms of PvE anyway. The important thing then is looking at the skills. There's not a lot of variance that we have here. So other than healing, we obviously want to be able to dish out some damage. So we pick up all of the healing skills that we have in the one tree. But in terms of damage, we go with our normal curses for curse explosion, and we take poison. So we inject venom to be able to increase the amount of damage we do on our curse explosions, and we take karmic haze, but we're going to spec into it for single target. So there's nothing special here. In terms of the passives that we take, we need Assassin Step to help with the mana from pack to pack. Wrathful Edge allows the dots to be able to crit and obviously increases the crit damage. We're going to take Murderous Energy purely because we're going to take the extra damage that we can get in terms of increasing the poison damage that then in turn increases our Curse Explosion damage. Not going to bother picking up anything like Destructive Fang or Assassin's Instinct. Destructive Fang's likely going to be in your group anyway from someone else, and we don't really care about crit in general. As usual, Wraith's Beckon, Devotion of Emptiness for the healing. We're going to take Vampiric Contract just for that extra trickle healing from our damage as well. Um, there's no reason not to take Noble Revival, although we don't have a lot of extra mana or a lot of max mana. We do sit in this build at around 8,000, so it's over 16,000 in terms of 16%, sorry, in terms of bonus healing, and that's just the epic one. But Selfless Soul is the interesting one, and I'll explain a little bit why in a minute on why Selfless Soul is going to be vital in terms of managing your mana and also getting the most efficiency out of your heals. For skill specialization, there's not a whole lot here. We take the increased duration of poison purely because it's going to factor into our curse explosion damage. There's 6 points left, but there's nowhere really to spend them that's useful. Um, we take the normal damage amp for our curse explosion, so our dots, the chance to stack 2. We take the Cane Touch, and we take the single target curse explosion so we can get more of these off. Swift healing is an interesting one. We take healing transfer because it just saves you on mana if you're not having to heal yourself if there's any kind of large amounts of AoE coming in, which there will be in tier 2, in 2-star, sorry. Increases the range because people like to stand out of your range, but if you're in an organized group, they should be relatively grouped up anyway between mechanics. And then additionally restoring 50% of the base damage as mana is great for helping enable your DPS, because that's what we're ultimately going to be looking to do there. We turn Clay Salvation into Genesis Rage, and we pick up the extra 5.6% damage that we're going to do for the entire party, and we take the range just to make this easier to keep up on top of people. Time for punishment, we take the skill damage resistance on the target. This could be changed for enchanting time, and you could theoretically keep this up on 2 people with minimal downtime because of buff duration, but you'd have to tweak a couple of points on this. We've got Unlucky Cloak. This again is going to enable us to increase the damage output that we get from Curse Explosion. Once we've got all of our dots up and we've just refreshed them, we Unlucky Cloak into Curse Explosion. Invincible Wall. This is pretty much used on cooldown during trash, during bosses. There's no reason not to. Having that shield up is great, but timing it around any kind of AoE is obviously preferable. But for that, we take turn it into a party-wide buff, and we take the range on this. And then Fountain of Life is one of the things that plays into our mana regen. So we take the additional recovery on mana, take the radius, and we take the duration on this. Now, Blessed Barrier is what you're going to use for where you need significant amount of heals. So this is used on boss mechanics where the tank is stunned or it needs an external cooldown. So in 2-star dungeons, you'll find that there's a lot more kind of tank damage mechanics where they have to use their stamina to block or to dodge roll. and there are going to be mechanics they have to eat, so having Blessed Barrier is going to be huge for that, especially since we don't take consecutive use on Swift Healing. Now there's a reason why we don't take this. It's ultimately a very big crutch, but if you read Swift Healing, you'll see that the mana cost of the heal increases with every consecutive use. So getting into the habit of using this 3 times is going to incredibly quickly drain your mana. So you don't want to be using this more than twice, so we just completely remove the ability to do this. If you wanted to go for Time for Punishment for damage, you could drop the chance for it to stack twice and pick up this, and then maybe Duration on Blessed Barrier. I think having Duration on Blessed Barrier is a good one anyway, or a good use of the last 6 points. But there's nothing else that is massively worth using. In terms of where we go with R1 Masteries, what I would say is looking at this middle tree is going to be your best bet, because the bonus skill heal and then obviously the heavy attack at the end of the tree, but the bonus skill heal is going to be what you realistically want to pick up, along with the top tree for mana regen. The curse damage is nice to have as well. So the top tree is a pretty good tree to assist with your damage, but if you are struggling with things like mana and cooldowns, picking up the bottom tree to get the mana cost efficiency is good as well. So I'd say if you're new to the build, probably going as far as Redemptive Penance, and then dropping down to make sure you pick up Spiritual Focus, and then depending on where you wanted to go from there, you could have a pick up curse damage if you want, and try and get down to regenerative meditation once you've got the mastery points to do it. But these points are all pretty easy to realize where the value is. This one is going to be the big one from a healing perspective. Having that extra 8% skill heal is big, so picking that one up. In terms of Dagger, I don't really change this when it comes to PvE because I have the wand out when I'm healing anyway. There isn't really a lot that's worth having from this, so I wouldn't bother changing this around too much. Like I said, I wanted to show a couple of tips. There's not really a lot to healing in terms of what we can do. Obviously, when we're starting a fight, we want to make sure that we get our dots up on the target. We want to make sure that we're popping Time for Punishment, and then we want to position where we can get the most out of our damage buff. So the range is significant on this. As you see, it'll reach from me to the guards, and you want to make sure that you're positioned so that you get this up on absolutely everybody. The same for the shield. You want to make sure that you're in a position to get the shield up on everybody at all times, and you want to make sure that Time for Punishment is being up on the target as much as possible. But depending on your group synergy, you kind of want to time this with any bow users using their mark for cooldown. This is going to mean that they get the most damage, or they're going to have the most damage. So timing your cooldowns with your group where possible is important, but ultimately if you are obviously with randoms and doing random dungeons, that's not going to be great. We've already removed one of the biggest drains on mana by taking Swift Healing away so that we can't use it twice. We can't use it 3 times, which means that we're not going to be draining mana from this. But you want to be very careful on your use of things like Unlucky Cloak, because 472 mana is a substantial amount of our mana pool. Blessed Barrier as well at 300 mana. Everything else is relatively cost effective. But in terms of managing your mana, whenever you're using Fountain of Life, you want to make sure that you are always inside it. And the reason being is if you look down here, you'll see that the passive stacks and stays stacked. And it's going to stay stacked consistently now until the end. And you've only got around 12-13 seconds until you can use Fountain of Life again. And what that buff is, it's the Selfless Soul. So it's giving you an increase in mana regen, and it's 33.2 mana regen that stacks up to 5 times. So making sure that you're stood inside the Fountain of Life when you're using it is going to regen a shit ton of mana and allow you to stay on top of this. Ultimately, your job while you're playing a healer is to heal, so you can forego using damage. If a fight's dragging on and you're struggling, make sure that you're prioritizing keeping this buff up as much as possible. So when it comes off cooldown, you're getting that back up again, and obviously buff duration is going to increase this as well, and going to allow you to get the most out of this. You want to make sure that you're keeping your debuff on the boss, and then everything else in terms of damage comes as a second to making sure you have enough mana to heal. If there are occasions where you need to heal the tank quite significantly, because you're limited, you're likely going to have Fountain of Life on cooldown consistently. It should be underneath the tank anyway, but also yourself. What you want to do is use Blessed Barrier for the bonus healing. This is going to impact the fountain heal as well as your subsequent swift heals, allowing for a huge amount of burst healing to recover from any kind of boss mechanics. Really quick video, this is the build that I use. People will have variants on this, but ultimately there's not a whole lot of flexibility in terms of one dagger for healing. This is what I'll be using in 2-star dungeons whenever I need to heal. We're not the most desirable DPS, so having this as an option is going to get you into groups a lot easier, and being able to heal and not just rock a healing build, pretending to be a healer and doing damage, is definitely the way forwards. There is a way that you'll be able to heal 2-star dungeons pretty much exclusively with Vampiric Contract, but I'll cover that in a later video. Any questions, leave it in the comments and I'll get back to you.